Hello, ladies and gents, boys and girls, people of all ages, sexualities, and identities, and welcome back to another Doctor Who review. And we're back with some more Trial of a Time Lord. Last time we left off, the Doctor found himself in a woods for a battle against the Valiard. But the true question is the Doctor guilty, or is he innocent? Yes, he is guilty of interfering in the lives and histories of other worlds and universes. But do the means outweigh the ends? Yes, so catching up, we're back in the trial room and the Valiard and the Doctor are back at it. They're both hitting heads again, and so we go into another story. This time with Melanie Bush. Now, Mel is a new companion on the block, and essentially she's in a position in which we are about to find her in a story about photosynthesis in a sort of way. It turns out the Doctor and Mel have arrived on what appears to be some kind of holiday resort spa. It's floating in outer space, and two members of the repair team seem to be robots. There is sabotage at foot, and there are creatures growing down below in the basement, creatures known as the Vervoids. Now, the best way to describe them, and I know this sounds a bit crude to say, but they look like giant, well, vaginas. Yes, they're a plant that looks like a vagina. Now, this, of course, is unintentional, as it is supposed to be some kind of photosynthesis in which these plants have flower-like faces. But of course, as I just crudely said there, they look like vaginas. They just do. Take my word for it. But back to the story at large. These Vervoids are growing and growing and growing. And of course, they are like plants that eat people. They're carnival plants, for once. They're very similar in a way to what you might as well say about Seeds to Doomsday and the Eighth Doctor story about. Vervoids are very similar to the Crinoids. They eat humans and they essentially turn humans into them in this story. The Doctor is in a race against time in which he tries to find a way to either speed up or slow down their progress of growth, but because of the mass heat and the ventilation and a lot of things going on the ship, the Doctor and Mel find themselves in a position where genocide is the only option to destroy them. After disabling the two robots and finally figuring out the Vervoid's weakness, being sunlight and anything to do with too much oxygen, it becomes clear to the Doctor that to speed up the process would of course cause decomposition. After the events of this story, the Doctor pleads with the Valiard and the people and the Time Lords in the courtroom that essentially he did this out of a mercy for the Vervoids. He never intended to murder them in cold blood. Instead, he only did this to preserve the life of the people on the ship. The Valiard then points out to him the amount of times the Doctor has referred to other life forms and people about the consequences of genocide, and yet right here in this story, in the one that they have shown on the screen, the Doctor can't exactly explain himself for why he uses this action. Well, he can, but the Valiard sees his explanation as a bit of a get-out-of-jail-free card, and so the Valiard pushes him and pushes him and pushes him further. However, when the Valiard finds himself in a position in which he can't defend himself, the Doctor finds himself in a position in which he tells a story and starts to begin to catch the Valiard out. The Valiard realises that the Doctor is getting closer and closer to his secret, and of course begins to back away. So, Terror of the Vervoids, or The Trial of the Time Lord. What did I think of this third installment of Trial of the Time Lord? I thought this is a very good and very logical story. I mean, in modern Who, we've gotten past this whole genocide kind of concept. However, we've definitely gotten to a stage in the Doctor Who universe where from the War Doctor to now the Sixth Doctor, to looking back even to the first, second, third, fourth, and fifth Doctor, there are always times and consequences in the Doctor's timeline. every incarnation of the Doctor has had to face his challenge. For the first Doctor, it's facing the fear of the Celestial Toymaker. For the second Doctor, it's facing the fear of the Cybermen. For the third Doctor, it's the giant spiders from Metebelis 3. For the fourth Doctor, it's the fear of death and moving on. For the fifth Doctor, it's facing the fear of watching the Silurians be mercilessly killed on an underwater base. For the sixth Doctor in this story, it's the Vervoids. For the seventh Doctor, it's the truth and consequences between him and his companions. For the eighth Doctor, it's the oncoming battle that is to come. For the War Doctor, it's the reparations for every crime that he commits in the Time War. For the ninth Doctor, it's the end of the Time War and remembering who he truly is. For the 10th Doctor, it's this idea that he can't always win, and that the man that never was. For the 11th Doctor, it becomes this question of Doctor Who. For the 12th Doctor, it's this idea of whether he's a good man. For the 13th Doctor, it's this idea of who really am I. For the 15th Doctor, it's this idea, will time ever stop for me? And those are just a few Doctors I should name. There's also this ongoing quest that I've been listening to in Big Finish with the Fugitive Doctor, where she's still trying to find tracks of her past. She feels like her mind has been wiped, but she doesn't truly know the extent. Each Doctor and each incarnation across the centuries has had their own challenge, and the trial of the Time Lord just shows the 6th Doctor facing his. The question the 12th Doctor wants to ask, am I a good man, really applies to the 6th Doctor in this story. He's not a bad person, but the 6th Doctor must really start to question himself on this idea, is he any better than anyone else? Can he really justify his means of genocide? And most importantly, where does he go from this? And I feel like this installment of the Trial of the Time Lord really hits home with this idea. And that's why I've got to give it a 10 out of 10, because it handles it perfectly. The 6th Doctor is stunned, and he's also in this kind of grieving stage. I mean, he has just pointed out the fact that he believes he's lost Perry. So, where would he go next? Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next Doctor Who review. Until then, goodbye, stay beautiful, and have an incredible night, you beautiful people.